Senator, let's start with you. You're our veteran legislator on this panel, and let me just ask you, can you bring our viewers up to what's going on right now at the Capitol, just sort of generally? We've got 3 or 4 days left, right? We've got to have to act by Sunday, I believe. Can't pass any bills on Monday, if I recall correctly. Where are we at from a process standpoint? Can you help our viewers with that?
Well, we just left the office about an hour ago. So what we know is that the Senate adopted a resolution in the Finance Committee to basically continue the funding to keep the agencies open, and there will be, according to this resolution, no new funding. And so obviously in our caucus we are very alarmed about it, because if we don't have new funding, what that means is that we're going to have to cut a lot of funding, since we are not able to really keep up with inflation. So we are very concerned, particularly, of course, in areas of healthcare and education, but also people know that in judiciary we have been really looking at a lot of issues related to public safety and corrections, where we really need to make significant decisions to increase funding. So we know that continuing the current level of funding actually means cutting a lot of funding for schools and healthcare providers, et cetera. So we're very concerned. Clearly, I am not supporting that. We will see. We're convening tomorrow morning to talk about the implications of this decision and where we are at, what is the next step for us.
And that bill is, I think, what you sometimes see referred to in the newspaper or in the news coverage of the legislature as a lights-on bill, right? So,
correct.
So, Representative Gruenhagen, where do you think things are at the legislature right now, and any predictions about what's going to unfold over the next 72 hours or so?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention as far as my introduction, I am married to my beautiful wife, Emily, for 43 years. I have 3 daughters and 5 grandchildren.
Oh,
and
it's
one of the reasons I'm down here.
Yes.
You know, our caucus believes that there is enough money in the system without raising taxes. Currently, the DFL wants to raise taxes about $12 billion, and we're already one of the highest tax states in the nation. We have $3 billion of additional revenue, $2 billion that is being applied to automatic increases, so that gives us $1 billion surplus, all right? On top of that, we just got a revenue report that we received, according to the Minnesota Department of Revenue, that we received an additional $481 million of revenue over and above projections. So the economy, Minnesotans are doing well economically. We're seeing very high and excellent tax revenues coming in, and I think the government needs to live within its means. I know that, I've heard this.
So is there some discussions going on between the House and Senate and the governor now? Is there?
Yep.
Tell our viewers where that process is at.
Okay. Right now, I think that's the major sticking point, is that the Republican caucus, both in the House and the Senate, and again, some of the most current negotiations have been private, so we're not sure what has been going on.
Right.
But the Republican caucuses generally believe we don't need to raise taxes and that we can live within our means. And I know, I've been involved with government many years, and you hear the inflation argument all the time. And my response to that is, yes, there's inflation for government, but there's also inflation for the taxpayers and the families and the businesses. And they have to make the tough decisions to live within their means and prioritize their spending. And I think government needs to learn that lesson versus always automatically saying, well, we need a tax increase, which again, in the long run, the cost of that has to be passed on to the businesses, the families, the seniors, and the low-income people. Because when you raise taxes to that degree, ultimately it affects the price of goods and services in our state, and that makes it more difficult for families to meet their budgets, for businesses to give raises, and for farms to operate efficiently and effectively.
Representative Salk, where do you see things at currently?
The discussions right now, I think, are where the news media has adequately described it to the public and given them a good picture of it. We have each of the groups that are the leadership together. As Glenn inferred, they are essentially in a cone of silence. The words have been used, which means essentially they don't convey out what they've been talking about. And I think most people really do know that in this level of negotiations, where very large, important things are being set, you really can end up with way too many cooks in the kitchen in almost any discussion that would be going on. And so there really is a need for this to be a confidential, private discussion between people. So they're allowed to say things that they just need to say for the purposes of maybe oiling the discussion and that sort of thing. So I think that there is very good in the fact that they're doing it that way. I think that there are great signs from what's been going on, and that is that there tends to continue to be ongoing discussion. For the last 3 days now, I believe they have gone into the discussions. They've talked for extended periods of time during days and come out, gone back the next day and gone right back at it and stayed continuous through that. I've been through a number of things in life where these kinds of long discussions were taking place, and they oftentimes can't sustain themselves unless the people sitting there believe that they are moving forward and have progress that they are able to be able to capture and then move into maybe a final agreement. So I think that just the nature of what we have seen them doing tells us that there is progress, that they are moving, which I think is what we all, the citizens, would want. We want them to be trying to move this forward. As a result of that, oftentimes then we are encouraged, if you will, by our own human nature to guess what might be being said and what would be best and which kinds of things should be agreed to and all that sort of thing. My experience would tell me that those things are oftentimes not really that helpful because it might set out false assumptions. It might set out false expectations by the public to be hearing things that would appear to be based on one school of thinking, which oftentimes these discussions, this again is just my experience, but these discussions are oftentimes, they've broken through some of those things and they are now working on building agreements amongst themselves based on their own assumptions, not on the assumptions that I grew up with, you know, simple dairy kid from down south or that sort of thing. You know, they are doing it based on the total understanding of government as they see it, which is much broader than us individually, I think so.